The South African National Civic Organization, or SANCO, says it hopes the unions and the bargaining chamber reach an agreement soon, as the countrywide bus strike is financially crippling the ordinary person on the street. The Bargaining Council and the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, which is your CCMA, have proposed an offer of 8.75% for the first year and 8.25% for the second year. SANCO say while this prolonged bargaining takes place, thousands of commuters have to go into debt in order to pay for the more expensive transport in order to get to work. Jabu Mahlangu is the spokesperson for SANCO, and he joins us now live from our studios in Sea Point. Mr. Mahlangu, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming through.
Good morning to you and good morning to the listeners of the Morning Live.
Thank you so much indeed. I believe this has been quite a difficult one for commuters, as the strike has some financial implications on them. Talk to us about this.
Well, a 1-month strike affecting the very nerve of people's movement from one place to the other. When that nerve stops, the people suffer. Indeed, we know that the people that normally uses these buses are those that are poor in our communities. There are students who are going to school. There are people who actually who uses their last available money to pay for movement. And now, if these buses have stopped as they have for the month without any indication as to when that is going to happen, people get involved in debt. People are now going to loan sharks to borrow money to pay for transport, which is higher. I mean, paying for taxis. Even whilst they get those intervention of another measures of transport, they still arrive late at work. Others actually have lost their jobs. And we know that in certain places, for instance, in Mamelodi, even the trains are not moving. So people who are using the trains, people who are using buses, people from Gwandebele, people even here, in the Western Cape, who are using buses, they all have resorted to taxi. They have to try and leave very early in the morning and really hope to get back home on time. But such things don't happen. So the whole people's life has been severely interrupted. But indeed, economic-wise, even people that were employed, in other words, in this case, drivers, will take a long time to recover the loss of salaries for a month. So the whole economic system is affected. We are hoping that indeed those that are at the negotiation table facilitated by CCMA will think about the poor. Whatever happens in those negotiations, if at the back of their minds, both the employers and the unions can think about how this impasse affects the poor, I think it will actually help them to reach finality on the challenges that are facing. And indeed, we are sympathetic to the workers who are underpaid, and indeed for those, especially the remaining hurdles on the table. And we hope that management can look at available precedences in other transport systems, including the aircrafts, where you've got dual drivers. Indeed, you can't say the other one is not at work. If you get involved in an accident, what happens? I guess it is only when you think about the implication of the decisions that are taken can you really find a solution to the problem. But more than anything else, as we represent a constituency as SANCO that is of poor people, we are saying think about the poor when you negotiate.
And what's the general feel from commuters towards this strike? We've made mention of the fact that it has financial implications on them, but as well, we've spoken to some of them here on Morning Live. We're basically saying, look, I'm sitting with a final written warning now because I've been coming to work late. So it looks like people will, along the way, also lose their jobs.
Already, some people have lost their jobs. Indeed, people continue to arrive late. And employers are not always sympathetic when you don't know for how long you should wait for your worker who is supposed to be delivering or doing certain things in a particular time and the person doesn't show up. You're not even sure that he's going to show up. So it does, interrupt the whole economic system. And we are very sympathetic to the workers that are arriving late, workers that do not have money, some of them who are now indebted to loan sharks on monies that they will never recover in years to come. indeed our people are in a dire strain, and that's why we are saying those at a negotiation table, think about the poor, because for them it is going to be a longer route to recover. Some of them that have lost jobs already, they have to go and look for other jobs once the transport system is back, but they don't even have the money for their very initial travel. So it's quite hectic. It's easy for us who can afford, but for the poor, it is almost, like their sky has fallen. So economic-wise, they're affected, but indeed their social existence will also be affected quite heavily over a very long time to come.
All right. And as you representing the very same people here in Jabu Mahlangu, were you able to perhaps find out as to whether they will be reimbursed for their monthly and weekly tickets? Because some of them were complaining, saying they've already purchased their monthly tickets.
Indeed, we hope that the industry that is providing transport will understand that if people had paid for services and it is not their fault that those services have not been provided, there is an obligation. There's an obligation to reimburse. There's an obligation to keep those tickets alive. I don't think it would be very insensitive for anybody to cancel those tickets. For all we care as SANCO, we believe that even incentivizing those people would be required, both, I think, by intervention by government and the industry, because they should ease the pressure on the poor. We should always know that whatever decisions we take, if they are impacting on the poor heavily, we have a moral responsibility to ease the pressure on them. And in this case, that's why we've asked for government to intervene, but we are hoping that industry will also know that indeed you can't put so much pressure on people who can't even afford the barest minimum.
As you say, SANCO has on previous occasions called on the government to sort of break this deadlock. So what happens going forward? Do we just sit and wait while the consumers and commuters are suffering?
Well, indeed, we hope that those in leadership will always use what we normally call your risk management measures. In other words, people in leadership and management should always anticipate the risk. They should have a risk profile of the industry, and they should plan in ahead as to how do you mitigate risk. We are confronted with the situation. It's not the end of it. It will happen tomorrow, and therefore putting measures in place that anticipate what could possibly happen, both in terms of intervention, in terms of financial incentives, alternative transport measures, but also to say, how does government, labor, and civic society engage on these things in advance to avert a situation that would impact on the poor and the country negatively? Remember, the transport system is the nerve of the economy. If it is affected, the whole economy gets affected. And this may also result in your rating agencies reviewing South African economic standing. Because if we are seen to be a risky country, indeed, they have to take those things into account as to how do they impact on the future and the economy of the country. So all these things are very crucial, and therefore those that are tasked with responsibilities of managing the South African economy, be it those people that are employers, those people who are heading government, and indeed the civil society, these engagements should always be there so that we are able to anticipate and mitigate the measures ahead of their occurrences.
All right, I suppose we'll wait for the best. Jabu Mahlangu, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Jabu Mahlangu, the spokesperson of SANCO, talking to us about the dire effects of the continuing bus strike, and more so the effects that the strike has on commuters. All right, we're taking a quick break here on Morning Live.